Okay, everybody, again, welcome to the power of our story, and thanks for sharing another Friday afternoon with me. We all know each other on here, but for those that might be watching the recording, I'm Richard Sprunger, and I've been with the power of the story, I think, about a year now, plus or minus. Maybe not quote, but it feels like it. It feels like I have known everyone so much longer, and Scott and Sarah from the inception have made me feel so welcome that they feel like family to me. So it feels like I've been here forever and I've known them for years beyond what we've spent together. With that said, I was 15 years in the military, 25 years as a firefighter. So I was a Navy SEAL 15 years, and I've been a firefighter now for 25. What does that mean about the power of our story? Well, that's a heck of a lot of trauma. That's 40 years of carrying a lot of things that I probably didn't have to carry as long as I did. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of my story. My journey with PTSD and trauma started at the age of 12 when I was waiting to go roller skating with my dad. And then my mom came home with my grandma, distraught with grief and just unable to function in life at that point in time. And that's how I learned my dad had never be coming home, that he was taken from me by a drunk driver. What that also did is that set me on an impossible task of trying to make a dead man proud, because you just can't do it. But I tried as hard as I could for 15, 20, 25 years. And then I don't know when and how my nervous system came to peace with it, but I realized he already does. So slow down. But it caused me to hyperachieve. Not one martial art, but three, not one black belt, but three. Joined the military, had to be a combat medic. Then I had to be the special forces. So I went to the SEAL teams. Then I just kept trying and trying. And then multiple injuries forced me out of my community. I couldn't do my job any longer, so I had to do something safer. So I became a firefighter. And I did that and have been doing that for 25 years. And I've got about 5 years left. But there's a lot of unresolved trauma. And so what I want to talk about today is this: don't turn away from the shadows. I'm going to say that again. Don't turn away from the shadows. And ironically enough, the last couple of days, chase the things that bring you joy. My wife and I have been chasing the moon for the last 3 days. So it's been a full moon, a 99%, a 98% moon, and it's been setting over the ocean out here in California at the same time the sun comes up, and that doesn't happen very often. And oh my God, 2 days ago, it was glorious. It was fire red, orange. It's the most beautiful moon ever. And we had a great idea. Let's go up to the top of Soledad Mountain and you can see everything. Well, the park wasn't open, so we couldn't get in. So then we had to chase it down the coast. And by the time we got down over PB Drive, it had already set, so we missed it. So today was another try. So we got up and we went for it, and you could see it. But now by the time we got to the beach, it was behind the clouds. But we had a glorious sunrise. And so tomorrow we're going to give it a chance again. And the moon's going to come into play in my story, but I just thought it was ironic as my story started today that we've been chasing it for the last couple of days. And it's been a beautiful experience to share with her, even though we haven't gotten the moment we want. So hopefully tomorrow we will. So again, don't turn away from your shadows. Don't turn away from the shadows. I'm going to start with a quote. Until you make the conscious or the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's by Carl Jung. And I'll say it again. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What does that mean? It means I can't change it, but yet we can. So, what do I mean by don't turn away from your shadows? So, I'm going to tell you a brief story that the military guys might sound funny, and the ones that are might be like, oh my God, that really happened. But yes, it did. So, as a SEAL, you have to be parachute certified, but you don't have to be free fall certified. There's plenty of SEALs that are not free fall certified. Now, there's a pipeline, and they've added 6 months to all of the SEAL training because you have to have all these certifications that you used to get after you got to the team before you got to the team. And one of those is free fall school. So there's two ways to jump in the military. You have what we call static line or dope on a rope. And what that is, and there's even a cadence for that we sing when we're running. You know, SEAL Team Froggy gonna take a little trip. SEAL Team Froggy heading down the strip. Stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door, jump right out, and count to 4. So what's that mean? You have a parachute, but it's got a 6 or a 12-foot lanyard on it. The 12-foot lanyard is if you're jumping out of a helicopter. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But the 6-foot or 8-foot one is when you're jumping out of a regular airplane like a C-130 or a C-141. There's a huge cable strung across the aircraft, and that lanyard is attached to your parachute. So you stand up and you hook into the cable, and then you just run out of the back of the airplane and you fall, and the cable opens your parachute, and all you have to do is drift down and softly, right, Scott? Softly. No such thing. Hit the ground. You hit the ground like a sack of potatoes, I'll put it that way. So there is no soft. The other way is free fall school. Well, unbeknownst to me, and on my third jump, I was horrified as I was jumping, and I went to pull the ripcord, and I realized, oh my God, I packed my own parachute. Because you pack your own chutes in free fall school. And I was so terrified. Get this, as a SEAL and a firefighter, I'm afraid of heights. I'm going to own that right here, right now. But it was part of the job. It was mission essential. So, right, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of action in the face of fear. So back to the jumping. So we had several jumps. I was finally getting comfortable with it. And then the night jump came. And they kept just talking about it. And they were building up this night jump. And the instructor said often, don't turn away from the shadows. Don't turn away from the shadows. So what happens when you're jumping at night? When you jump out and you're up in the sky, it's fully lit and you have your full depth perception and you have your full peripheral vision. And the moon illuminates the sky so you can look left and right and you can see your fellow parachutist that's with you. Now, the scary thing is when you're jumping and falling, you can't really see them. So you're hoping that your spacing is good. But once you're under canopy, you can see each other under canopy. Under canopy means under the chute. But something unique happens. And we had a saying in the military, and I know the military members on here will understand this. Everything's different at night. Everything's different at night. And then in the SEAL team, we had another saying, everything's really different underwater. But as you jump and you come down, your depth perception shifts. And your peripheral vision will actually lie to you. And suddenly the biggest threat is the other jumper. Because if you hit them and your canopy is tangled, bad things happen. So what do they mean? Don't turn away from the shadow. When you get closer to the ground, the moon is above you, so it casts shadows. So you'll look out and you'll see a shadow and you'll think it's another jumper. And you'll turn away from the shadow. Well, the bigger your shadow, the closer you are to the ground. So when you turn, and you've seen those shows where they pull on the risers and they just step down like they're stepping off of the last stair of a stairwell. Well, what happens is when you pull, the parachute flares and it cups air and it just lifts you for just a minute and you can step down. Well, when you turn, what you do is you lift the side of the parachute and it speeds you up and accelerates you into a turn from about 8 to 10 knots to probably about 17 to 24 knots in that turn. So I'm drifting to the ground and it's been great. I've been enjoying the whole jump. And I looked to my left and I caught a shadow out of the corner of my eye. And I thought it was another parachute. I yanked on that toggle because I was not getting tangled up with him. What happened? My parachute dumped air. I went from 8 to 10 knots to about 17 to 24 knots. And I hit the ground heels first, unprepared. Slammed my heel into the ground, ended up fracturing a heel. I had to finish jump school with a fractured heel. How I did that, I don't know. Perseverance, right? And it flipped me over. I did a front flip over and through the parachute risers onto the ground. And I landed on a rock on my back, so I had a bruised spine and a fractured heel. And I lay there laughing at myself. And I thought, don't turn away from the shadows. The funny thing is, I didn't listen and I paid for it. So, where's that story come into our life today? Aren't most of the things that are traumatizing us, our stories, the PTSD, the traumas, they all live in the shadows of our nervous system, don't they? And how often do we turn away from those? They're the moments we've never processed, the identity we built to survive, to overcome that. And just like that jump, when we turn away from them, we don't avoid the pain. What do? We create more pain and suffering. And if we could just turn around and face the doggone shadow, right? We could have more healing. The shadow isn't the danger. And what's in the shadow isn't the danger. It's avoiding what's in there. If I don't look at it, it won't affect me. But in real life, if you don't look at it, you just fall faster and faster and faster. Joseph Campbell said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. The cave you're afraid to enter holds the treasure you seek." Additionally, Carl Jung actually said, "What you resist not only persists, but it grows in size." So think about that. We avoid it, we resist it, but the pain and suffering grow. And if we could just face it, the treasure is inside the things we're afraid to face. So I have a couple of questions for you guys to open up dialogue. But first, I want to get some feedback. What's coming up for anybody in that story and how there might be relevance in their life today? Or how does this have meaning in your life today before I go into some questions?
I feel like I know it to be true. It is the most empowering thing to face um, hardship, um, things we can't articulate yet. Sometimes it's just that we don't have the language to articulate um, strong feelings or triggers. But I think really just kind of leaning into that and figuring that out, is it a trauma that we're trying to suppress, or is it a big sense that we just never have really had the language for? And then the empowerment when we can get that all articulated and supported somehow, with our own insight or with others who really support us and witness or validate what we just shared.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Rand, please, sir.
Yeah, don't run away from the dark, huh?
Yeah, don't turn away from the shadows. Yep.
Well, it's very fitting that I'm here, actually. Very ironic because
Hmm.
yesterday I went to the eye doctor in follow-up to my catastrophic loss of vision on Christmas Eve day last year that ended up being, I did not know you could lose your vision in one day without some kind of a horrific accident or something, but you can, trust me. And so we scrambled around, and I met with two surgeons the day after Christmas. And I had surgery on January 15th and took an hour and a half. And then it took another 6 weeks, the end of February, before I could see to read and start doing stuff, drive and so on. So I had this follow-up yesterday, and it didn't go well.
Hmm.
I might end up dark a lot sooner than I hoped. Um, so anyway, I have macro degeneration, and there's different types of that. My mom had it and she was blind the last few years of her life. So I've been checked on it for up until, well, a year ago, even went to a very reputable eye place and was told, nope, you don't have macular degeneration, but they got better equipment, better tests today. So my left eye, he said, there's no point. Your left eye is gone. I kind of knew that. Um, but we can give you shots in your right eye. If you don't get the shots, your right eye will be like your left eye within a year or two. If you get the shots, in your right eye, it'll probably be 3 or 4 years. But there's nothing else they can do. So I'm getting my first shot on April 10th. And last night was dark. Again, here I go.
Yeah.
I spent another night thrashing around trying to figure out, how I was going to handle it. I pray to God, help me handle it with grace and dignity. I did the other episode with quite a bit of it and I didn't have any tantrums or treat anybody bad or anything like that. In fact, most of my friends, how come you're not more upset? Well, what I can do about it anyway? So, but you know what? I woke up this morning, I went to a meeting. I spent an hour with a guy whose wife's committed suicide a couple days ago. Tried to commit it. She's still alive. Um, and I realized I have to accept that darkness if it comes, if and when it comes. And I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing, which is a lot of stuff. I pretty much work 8, 9, 10 hours a day between, recovery, service stuff, and my writing and the publishing and all that stuff. I did a podcast today, and I'm going to hope and pray if somebody comes along with something, some scientist somewhere is making some progress, or if not, we ask ourselves sometimes, what part of God's plan don't you like? Well, sometimes I heard a lot of it. But the irony of this whole thing, if I hadn't gone blind on Christmas Eve day, I would have never known, right? So there was sunlight behind the darkness. And I would have just gone another year probably, and it would have gone past the point where you can do much about it. So my blindness for 2.5 months well, it wasn't that long. It was like 9 weeks. Was a blessing, right? In a way. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Wow. That's I can only imagine. I can't begin to even empathize, sympathize, or realize what you're going through, my friend. But I see such a spirit and a courage and a strength in you. And I know there's going to be some fear and anxiousness in there more than likely as well. But I just want to say I see you in that, and I'm wearing the weight of it, so I can only imagine what that weight on your shoulders might feel like. But just know not only the people that you have around you, but this room alone, that you are surrounded by nothing but love, right, guys? Show of hands. I mean, we all love, care for you, support you, and we're just here. And if you ever need to talk, you got my number. I'm here, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. This group means a lot to me. I am part of a tribe, and you're my tribe, one of my tribes for sure. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I
Well,
don't feel
thank you.
bad. I'm kind of over the shock of it a little bit. And I know I just have to keep doing what I'm doing, and who knows, I could drop dead tomorrow of an aneurysm or something. So I'm not. I don't feel a whole lot of weight. I think during the course of today and dealing with other people with problems worse than mine right now, for sure, the weight has been pretty much taken off. So that's a blessing too. But tomorrow, who knows?
Yeah.
It goes in waves, right, Richard?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Richard and Rich, right? I mean, it goes in waves, I'll tell you,
Yeah,
you
Rich
know,
too, of course.
and it's, I never understood the it goes in waves thing until I was a frogman and playing heavily in the ocean where you can't get up because it's one wave after the other, and you end up underwater a minute and a half, and you're like, could this literally be it? Because I cannot get a break, you know. So thanks so much for sharing that and being vulnerable. And man, we love you, brother. Thank you, Scott.
Hey, Rich. I just want to jump in on the tail end of what Ram was saying. Ram, that was so powerful. Uh, and we love you, brother. I'm going to put you on our Wednesday morning list for the group that we have. I want to add you to the prayer list. We've done it before, but I just want to remind folks. My mom is going through what you're going through, and so at some point she's going to be blind here, and then that's a whole nother thing to contend with. But I think your perspective is absolutely right. And it's one that not a lot of people get to easily, right? I think the more that we suffer, the more we kind of figure that part out, right? Not everybody, but it helps when we have gone through things that are hard to have a better perspective. And what you said just made so much sense. And the empathy, it made that so much. Rich talked about carrying the weight. I mean, that hearing you say that kind of took a little bit of weight off. You know, sorry, there's a fire out here. That's the my app on my phone. If you heard that, it's just an update on the fire. It's north of here, so Anyhow, so perspective, I think really, really matters. And you mentioned that God works in mysterious ways and we don't always know. And that is the absolute truth. And then when you see that he has been there, uh, that's a revelation that really helps with the faith part of all this. And you spoke to that, right? With, hey, if it didn't happen on the 24th of December, yeah. So yeah, God bless you, brother. And thank you for sharing that. That it's a good share on a Good Friday. I'll say that. But so, Rich, to what you're talking about, you know, I look at some of this stuff is timing, right? And how you address something that's important like this. I think you have to be good with timing, and we can't always control timing, right? But if you can, then sometimes it's a matter of timing. If you need to address an issue, say like with another person, something that you've been struggling with relationship wise, but then it also comes back a little bit to your perspective. Uh, what are the things in life that have shaped you, and how different is the other person that you may be dealing with in a relationship, and how much are you willing to listen to their perspective and make space and grace for them, right? I think the older we get, I mean, some people do this sooner. Some people are just old souls and they understand all this stuff. But someone like me, it took a while to figure that piece out. And so, I think it's important to confront these issues in life, right? Because if we ignore them, it's like ignoring a cancer that's silently eating your body away, especially if you know it, right? If you know there's something and you just say, well, I'm going to put it off to another day, that another day might not come, right? Or you put it off so long that then it's just almost insurmountable, right? I mean, it kind of depends again on what the issue is, but yeah, having the faith to having the faith, a little bit of timing to move forward. I think we always need to address these important issues. Do it in the right way and try to do it without emotion. Don't react, respond. I think those are all important things. And I just want to share one thing before I forget. Rich, we are so blessed to have you on here, Richard. You know, that time has absolutely gone by quick. And, I think you and I have, I've known you for a little longer than a year, but we have absolutely bonded a lot here over the past, months recently, in particular. And the level of wisdom that you bring is, I mean, it's beyond notable. I look forward to spending time with you because you always have something positive to say, and you always bring quotes from folks that said a lot of good things and that were smart folks. And your timing with that and how you bring it in, it really is something that sticks with you. And I know everyone here appreciates that. And so I just wanted to thank you and thanks for your time here today.
Man, I appreciate that, brother. I will receive that. It's ironically it's hard to receive that, because I know what I've been through, and I'm just here to serve, and it almost feels uncomfortable sometimes. But thank you so much. And our thoughts and prayers are going to go out to your family and your mom with what she's going through as well right now. And you're absolutely right. At some point we need to have the courage and the faith, be it faith or just faith that we can get through to face these things. So absolutely. And thanks for those words again, Scott. Anybody else, what's coming up from, my share?
Yes, Richard, I appreciate very much what you say. And for me, as a civilian person, I can say don't ignore the shadows means not to ignore your inner voice and your inner sacred space, and to make sure that no person enters your space that is, for example, a person who tries to manipulate your inner voice. And this is what I have to learn, and I have to learn, or I had to learn to trust my inner voice. And I really felt, as you know, that there were several things that were not in order in my family, and this is what makes me very, how can I put that? That makes me going on a journey and to try to figure that out, what this is, this shadow. And as you know, it was a heavy shadow, and it was the thing that my grandfather was in Second World War, and he was part of a very heavy war crime. And this is what he could not solve during his lifetime, of course. And I think that is the connection. What I think was similar to Rand's story, there was no psychological help, and this was for this then generation. And as I understand Rand, I know a little part of his story. It was for the Vietnam veterans. There was no psychological help to process these deep issues, and this is what I suppose caused the break in my family. And so it is very moving for me also to hear Rand's story, because I feel how heavy the weight is he has to carry. And there was no help in terms of psychological or therapeutical help. And so I think that this, what you do here, or the power of our story does, the approach of telling the story is so important. And I appreciate it very much to listen to your stories and to take part of it, because it helps me that to feel me less alone. Even if I'm not a combat veteran, of course, but I feel the trauma my grandfather has go through. And this is very hard stuff. And I'm very happy that I learn a little bit that many of many of yours have to carry such a weight. And this alone is a very important fact to me that I can't ignore, that that helps me a lot to process.
Man, you know, having heard your story a couple of weeks ago and knowing what your family has faced, your father has faced, your grandfather has faced, and having to do a lot of that alone. It's heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. And I'm just grateful today that the taboo is, you know, being taken away, the curtain is being lifted, and resources are being made available, and people have a place to go. You know, so, and just the transgenerational trauma aspect of what you carry from those experiences. You know, science has proven it's real, but more importantly, your nervous system is proving it's real. You know, so I'm so grateful that you have found the power of our story so you can go where you can be supported when you need it and have a place to share your voice to bring some healing to yourself and your family. So thank you.
Yes, I think this is very powerful. I feel much better than 4 weeks ago. You know, we already had a talk about that, that brought me into tears, and I feel now that it is not so heavy anymore, and I feel the weight goes away from me, because I learned to understand, and I know to acknowledge what my grandfather went through. Of course, he was on the false side of the story. I know that he was a German soldier who was part of that. But I think we can't measure the trauma into what happened if you're on the victim side or on the perpetrator side, because the perpetrator is always getting a trauma too. And this is what I think what most of the Nazis ignored, because they, as perpetrators, traumatized themselves as well. As it is another kind of trauma, of course, but then the victims get, of course. But there is a deep break in humanity and a deep break in the fundament of being itself. And I think this has to be acknowledged.
I absolutely agree. And the only way to avoid the same things in the future is to have conversations about the past. You know, and the only way, I've said this before, the only way people are gone and forgotten is if we don't remember. You know, so history only repeats itself when we forget it, right? So we have to understand, and I think Scott and Rand both mentioned perspective. And in my book, perspective is underneath the understanding part, and I think appropriately so. Understanding the other person's perspective. That's the biggest thing that we lose in relationship. You know, for first responders, military, law enforcement, how many times when you were at the height of your career, does somebody in your family bring you something? And you looked at it and you filtered it through your perspective, through your life, through your lens. And I learned I was doing that. And what was I doing? I was avoiding grace, empathy, healing, and connection in my own family. Because if I took everything my kids or wife brought to me and I ran it through the perspective and filter of a Navy SEAL and a firefighter, it's not that bad. And there can never be room for growth, connection, healing, and space. So that's what you're saying here is understanding his perspective too, and then understanding your perspective. And when we do that, what do? We give people's lives and experiences meaning. So thanks for sharing that, Steve. Anyone else have some thoughts coming up? All right, so then what I want to do is I want to go into some questions. I want to ask you guys a couple of powerful, I feel, questions. Now, whether you care to share the answer with me or just write it down to reflect upon. And I was thinking about this the other day, Sarah, in the men's groups that I run and the group coaching that I do. We have a WhatsApp group. And I don't know if there would be too many people to have, but to have a Power of Our Story WhatsApp group. So when people are experiencing something, sharing something, they get my questions here, that they can go, wow, I had a profound question on this episode or on Scott's episode or Rand's episode, or, a thought hit me and I've been reflecting and journaling on that for a week. And I want to share what's coming up for me to just allow healing outside of our space. And then also to be a space where somebody can go, I could really use a phone call right now. So just food for thought. Don't know if that's a possibility. But so I came up with so many questions today, and they're all powerful. But I think the one that really sticks out to me right now is, where in your life are you or have you been avoiding a conversation, a memory? Scott, you and I have talked how when you're speaking, these memories come back, right? So then they can agitate. Or a truth that needs to be faced. And I guess a follow-on question to that would be this. This was a separate question, but I can see how I can tie these two together then right now. And what has that, avoiding facing it, what has that already cost you? Emotionally, relationally, maybe even professionally. So I'm just going to sit with that and let that sit with you guys for a little bit while you write it down and do some reflection. If you want to share, by all means, we're here. And I'd love to hear if anything's coming up for anybody. Should have had the Jeopardy music queued up for this one. So I'll start with one. And there's a book, I don't know if it was Rescue Your Marriage or Love Rescue or something like that I listened to on audio. And they brought up something. And it hit me in a different way than they brought up. They talked about things in relationships can hurt them. And if you're a dependent, and I don't mean children, but in the relationship dynamic, if you're dependent on the other person for various things, your happiness, your peace, your tranquility, stuff like that, that puts a weight on them to carry that you need to be carrying yourself. But what I realized And that combined with the conversation I had with my wife about 3 weeks ago. And I don't remember exactly how she asked the question, but she asked it. I'm going to try and summarize how she asked it, which was, looking back, where do you see that you became responsible for your mom's happiness? That combined with that book, and it kind of hit me. So after dad got killed, we moved in with my grandma and grandpa for a while. And the house got taken, whole long story. And then after we moved out from living with grandma and grandpa, we ended up moving up to our weekend home, which was a single wide trailer in a campground, which ended up being for me like one of the greatest things. It was on the Huron River, right off of Lake Erie, backed up to a swamp. I mean, I'm a legit Hank Williams "Country Boy Can't Survive" song, but we didn't have running water in the trailer. We used to have to stop and get spring water. So, for the first year, I ended up taking a bath in the river with a bottle of shampoo, until we ended up getting running water. And as Paula asked that, I realized that the worst thing that could have happened for us was moving out of grandma and grandpa's and moving into our place. And they moved into their place. They had in the same place and sold their house. But that's when I took over the role of her happiness. And I, she was dependent on me for her happiness. So how did I receive love and appreciation and acceptance? How could I show up to make her feel whole? Taking care of her and caretaking for her and staying with her. And, there'd be times where friends would call and be like, "You want to go to a movie?" I was like, "No, I'm just going to hang out with my mom." And I would sacrifice those things to be with her, to give her contentment and peace. That question combined with that revelation combined with the book, it hit me that one of the biggest um, pothole, speed bumps, I don't know what word to use, fracture in my relationship with Paula was that I got to the point where I made her dependent on me. It wasn't her choice, but it was little things like, "Hey, we need this from the store. I'll go. Hey, when you get home, I want to go to the store and get this. I'll get it on the way." She would even briefly mention that something needed to be done or handled, and I immediately was jumping on it. And I made her dependent on me because that was how I was seeking love and acceptance from her. And what does it actually do? Makes her invisible in the relationship. Doesn't give her the ability to show up in the relationship. And it creates disconnection versus connection. Kind of funny. I turned away from the shadow to get away from something, and I leaned into more pain. I did those things to create connection, and I created disconnection. So that was something for me that I hadn't realized and I hadn't faced.
Rich, that's it's funny how we as humans have similar things that happen to us in life. And sometimes we think, wow, I wonder if that's happened to anybody else. Odds are it probably has, right? But the goodness in all this is that we're talking about it, right? That we don't, we can take it out of that bag that we stuffed it in. And what you just said reminded me of an issue with my oldest daughter. I've got two daughters; they're both adults. Um, as the dad, if they come to you with something, your first thought is, okay, I need to be involved. I need to fix this. Because I'm dad, right? I need to pay attention, and then I need to take action. And I would do that with both my daughters. I wish that looking back on it now, I wish that I had let some things just play out, because I think it would have been better for them learning wise, right? I think I would have probably put them in a better place to handle some things moving forward as adults. But you know my story. My story is similar to your. I didn't have the dad growing up, and so I was damn sure I'm not going to fail my daughters. I'm not going to. And so I was just, I would be forward leaning on things like that. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, I've kind of lost track of time. My oldest daughter calls me, and it's probably been about 2 years. But anyhow, she calls and she was telling me, what's going on. And it was an important thing. And I was listening. And then I started to say, well, here's what you need to, I was giving advice. And she said, Dad, I love you, but I'm not calling you for advice. I'm calling just to share because I need to get this off my chest. And I love you, but I don't need your advice on this. I just need you to listen. And I was like, holy smokes, she's an adult daughter. uh, but man, that really struck me different, and it made me realize uh, that part of my life has absolutely changed, right? And then it got me to think on what I just said about, how often did I do kind of what you were just talking about that I didn't even, I would listen, but I was listening and thinking, how am I going to do this? What can I do to help instead of fully listening to what was being revealed. And you miss so much when you're not really paying attention, and you can see it in other ways, right? You can see there's people that just, that's their personality. When you're talking to them, they're thinking about the next thing they want to say instead of really listening to what you're saying. And we can really do damage in relationships. It's one thing to do it to someone that you don't know well. I mean, you really shouldn't do that, right? You should listen, but especially with folks that you care about and you love and are trying to help. So that I can really, yeah, I see that big time. Uh, for me, thinking through all this, I think the most important thing for me has become my fate, right? And I'm not going to go into all of that other than to say at certain points in my life, I was always, it wasn't the right time. I was always putting that off. And I always had a reason why. I'm too busy. This doesn't seem, I don't understand this. I was always building walls and putting space from myself in that. And then at some point, thankfully, that changed. But it took a number of things, but it took me being an active participant in it once I realized I can't put this off anymore because it's that important, and the change that has made in me is tremendous. It absolutely. I mean, I know it. I know I'm a very different person now than I was because I was able to exhale, reflect, and then the humbleness that comes with that. It gives you a different way of looking at things. The perspective change that is amazing. And so yeah, that was the thing that I was just putting off. And part of it is I felt, I felt betrayed, and that's a very, very real feeling, right? And so that was another thing that I put in front. How could this be? If all that's true, how can this be true? And that was a big stumbling block for me. Uh, but I'm thankful that that's not the case anymore. And that's part of what this weekend's all about. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that a lot. You know, it means a lot, and it's awesome to hear you speak from your heart like that. And there's a term, and it's proven. It's called automation. I don't know if I've mentioned that on here before. And we do it with the ones closest to us. And I think I've shared this with you, Scott, that We go out in the world, we give the world our best, and we give our family the leftovers. In the old day, now they ask if you want a to-go box, but they used to ask for a what? Doggy bag, right? So what's that mean? The animals get the leftovers. That's exactly what we do when we get home, is we give our family the leftovers. Well, we do that in conversation too, because how many conversations have all of us had on here with our spouses or significant others? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, more. And our nervous system automatically goes, I've had this conversation or similar to it, and it formulates a response and a conclusion, and then starts half listening. But for those that we don't know that well, we don't do that. It's kind of a unfair paradox, isn't it? Anyone else have anything they want to share?
Richard, very thought-provoking. There are a couple of things that I continue to hold on to that I haven't shared. And I know some of it is, well, part of it is probably shame. The other part is not understanding why it happened. One of the issues uh, took place when I was in my alcoholic state. Uh, the other one was when I was about 12 years, 11 or 12 years old. And I, I just haven't really felt comfortable in unloading it. I, I've thought that probably uh, I should talk to a therapist and first, you know, um, and all the stuff. It really would. Uh, the beginning of the conversation today, it just I couldn't get my mind off of this. Is when I retired. That's when the demons came out. It at a time when I had the least amount of resources available to me. The least amount of resources. I'm left a job. Boom. You know, fend for yourself type thing. And yeah, I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that. And again, I'm so grateful society has come where it has. And in the military, we had the saying, no one left behind, right? How many people have we left behind, though, that are still carrying those things like you are and haven't felt like they had a safe place to take them or to offload them or to share them? And, you know, I can say this, and I don't know what it is, but you mentioned when you were 12. And you've probably done some work on this, but if you haven't, I want to let you know that whatever it wasn't your fault, that you didn't bring it upon yourself, that at the age of 12, you can't bring anything upon yourself. And it doesn't mean anything about you. It's about the ones that were inflicting the damage and the injury. And you didn't deserve that. You truly did not. And it's not your fault. And it wasn't about you, it was about them. Now, that doesn't make the pain go away. But I want to let you know that you're safe and you're safe with me. And if you ever want to have a conversation, I'm here.
Thank you.
Roger that, brother.
Roger that.
Okay, we're a little bit after the hour. So I would like to encourage you guys to jot down these 2 questions and think about them this week. And you can email me, you can message me if anything comes up. But what pain are you unintentionally, right? Because we don't want to inflict pain on ourselves or anyone else. But what pain are you unintentionally creating for yourself or your loved ones by refusing to look at what created that pain or the pain that lies inside that you're refusing to look at? Is it costing them your presence? Is it costing you presence in your own nervous system? You know, my daughter held a somatic experience on the internet this morning, and she said something very profound. The human body wants to be embodied. How many times have we prevented our own embodiment? And then this is the last one I want to leave you with. What story about yourself? When I work with men, I talk about, what do you want? What do you really want? Why do you want it? What is it going to get you? And then I ask them this question: who do you need to become to get it? Or what story do you need to drop about yourself to become that person? So the question I want to leave you with is this: what story about yourself have you accepted as truth? And this is going to cause some reflection. You're really going to have to sit. I call it your thinking room. John Maxwell said this one time: if you don't have a thinking room, I'd have a thinking room, but the thinking room in my house is our sauna. We have an infrared sauna, and I'll go and sit there and close the door, and I won't turn it on. And it's like kind of quiet. It's almost like a quiet room, right? You need to find a thinking room or a thinking space for yourself, because you can't think with distractions. So, what story about yourself have you accepted as truth that may have been built in survival, not reality?
I can answer such a question. I am a parentified child. I'm the eldest daughter of 3, and my family was very poor. And my mother has to work as well in the together with my father. My father has a little workshop. He was an engraver, and he worked 70, 80 hours a week. And my mother has to do the biro and the economics and so on. And when I was a little child, I became responsible for my little sisters. And this was a role I was really too young for. It was an adult role. I was the mother of my younger sisters. And was what lasts in my adult life, that I feel responsible for everything. And I did not recognize that I was in that role, because for my mother, it was easy to flip the script, because she has more time to work, and I was the one who cared for the children, the sisters, of course. And this was a rule I had long time in my life, and I didn't realize that was a wrong rule. And it creates a lot of pain later on. And but I didn't realize that at first, that it was something that was caused in my childhood. And this was one of the reasons when I started in my 30s to reflect about that, because I had kind of burnout when I was 30, because I had so many responsibilities in my life that it was too much for me, and I could not distinguish what is a right thing with that and what is wrong, because I think I am the responsible one for everything. And that when I had this kind of burnout, I figured out that there were so many things that went wrong when I grew up, when I was a little child, and that I had to carry too much weight in my life. And this is one of the things is part of my life that I figured it out what went wrong, and of course what were the reasons that it went wrong. So this is in short terms what I figured out about your question. It's long ago, but of course I did not get rid with all of these feelings, but with I would say 80%. It is so around about 80% or 90 maybe. Yes. So, but it's hard stuff. It was hard stuff to change that.
Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah. And you're right. Parentified children end up carrying so many things that aren't theirs to carry. And it robs them of an experience that then shapes who you are. You said something there that I want to address. You said it was a long time ago. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Here's the sad, brutal truth. Our nervous system doesn't have a sense of time. So whether it was 20 years ago or 20 minutes ago, if it goes unhealed, unspoken, unfaced, unresolved, then however you do that, one little thing can happen and it puts you right back there in that moment. Because our nervous system has no sense of time. It needs to be faced. So thank you for that share.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to throw a challenge out to you guys. And I'm sure Sarah's probably already done this. And if not, you guys all have the link to this. You all have the email to these. My vision is that we start having 15, 20, 25 people on these calls. So you've got it. If you know a service member, active duty, retired, if you know a police officer, a paramedic, an EMT, a firefighter, a volunteer, I don't care. Share the link. Talk about the power of our story. Get them on here. Part of my daily mantra is I am changing the world and saving lives. One conversation, one man, one woman, one audience, one stage, one facilitation at a time. This is where we create healing and we can save lives. You guys got the link? Please share it and let's grow the power of our story to what it can be, that one day I see us having in-person 100, 200, 300 person events. So,
and Richard, if I can jump in
yeah,
and add something to that, folks that will see this in the recording, this is what we're doing at the VFW in Solana Beach, right? That's where we're attempting to do this live. Richard is part of that too. And the wisdom that he shares here, guess what? It's happening there too. And that's a good thing, right? It's an absolute good thing to be able to sit down and, look across the table with a cup of coffee. We're doing it one cup of coffee at a time, right? And there's power to that. And then to be able to get up and give your brother or sister a hug when they're going to take off and go about the rest of their day. We can do that virtually here and it's nice, but man, when you get to grab that guy or, whatever, that's just a very different thing. It's a very human, visceral, a good emotion, right? To be able to, and I can testify to this. Rich gives very good bear hugs. He's a big guy, and if he hugs you, you know it. And there's a lot of love in that. It's all good stuff. So yeah, that's a little plug for our Thursdays in Solana Beach at 8:30 in the morning. Come there as you are. You can come and go. Cup of coffee and a little bit of conversation. It's going to be a good thing.
and it's, I think, the third Saturday of the month. If it's the third, Sarah, is that a nod? Yes or no?
It's the last Saturday of the month.
Last
Saturday.
Saturday of the month.
That's right.
And I will be there April 25th with bells and whistles on.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. That's our storytelling Saturday, right? So, we have the coffee Thursdays at 8:30. every Thursday. And then, as Rich just said, at the end of the month, the last Saturday of the month, we have a storyteller that comes in and shares their story. And then we can, ask questions or have comments. We do that too. So good stuff.
Outstanding. All righty. Well, y'all, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with me and with us. And I'll say the same thing I say every time. Hopefully, I've impacted your life in a positive way today. So I love you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Richard. Love you all.
Thank you.